Hey everybody, welcome back to Lettermen Row. This is the practice report brought to you by Byers Auto. Football season has begun. Ohio State went out to the practice field Wednesday morning, got this 2021 season underway. This is the practice report brought to you by Byers Auto with Spencer Holbrook, Tim May, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. Get this out of here before you guys just fight over it for the whole show. Where to begin? I guess here's some pressing breaking news that Tyler Friday, senior defensive end for the Buckeyes, he is going to be out for the duration of training camp and potentially, most of the season and potentially more than that. We'll see exactly what happens with that after Ryan Day and Tyler Friday speak about what they are dealing with that undisclosed injury. Not great news there. This is a guy that Birmingham, I think, hasn't had a chance to really build on any consistent momentum. Injuries have got him at inopportune times throughout the year. Out the 3 years that he's been here, 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, but always seemed like a guy who could give them a little bit more and take that next step. And we saw him deal with a little bit of stuff late last year that I think is probably spilling over here. So put more pressure on those young guys, but unfortunate for Tyler Friday.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these situations where the Buckeyes are very, very thin on the defensive line as far as experience goes. Not as far as numbers go necessarily, but Tyler Friday is one of those guys who played some meaningful snaps. Didn't play any at the end of last season, and now I think the term would be indefinitely out. I guess we're all sort of assuming definitely out, but we'll figure out how that goes down the road. But it sucks for Tyler Friday, for sure. It doesn't suck for guys like Jaron Cage, who was the first guy out here today. I mean, as far as the defensive lineman leading the lines, running out, he looked in great shape. Haskell Garrett, of course, in a big spot for him. Antoine Jackson stepping up. The Buckeyes have a lot of guys that they can rotate in and out of that line, and I continue to be impressed by Ty Hamilton and the way he looks, just body-wise. I think he's a guy that you're going to see a lot of this early part of the season.
Named all those guys, Spencer, and he didn't talk about Tyreek Smith or Zach Harrison or Javonte John-Baptiste, who I know the last one caught.
Well, I'm talking three techs.
Gotcha. Well,
because that's what I think Tyler Friday is.
We all have talked about him playing 3 technique, but Ohio State resisted ever doing that.
Well,
so
they're wrong.
Well,
I don't think
Larry Johnson seems to know what he's doing.
I don't think it's good news for anybody that Tyler Friday is out, but if there's a silver lining to it, I think Javonte Jean-Baptiste has seen an opportunity arise with Tyler Friday being out, and he's grabbing it by the horns. I mean, he looks like a completely different player. When we saw him a couple years ago, he was kind of a skinnier guy who I kind of thought maybe they'd try and move him out to linebacker because he just wasn't really putting on a lot of weight. He looks bulked up. He looks like he fits in the defensive end room. He looks like the kind of guy that we see in fall camp, and then week 3 has 3 sacks, and we say, wow, where did that come from? I mean, he looks like a different player.
Yeah, you spoke about numbers, though. The numbers that stood out to me on the defensive line, they were 33 and 44. I mean, Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, anybody, any program in the country would give whatever for just one of those guys. And, those are guys that clearly are ready, I think, to grab any opportunity they get here by any opening on the defensive line, but especially the defensive ends. It gives them some flexibility, maybe to move some guys around, et cetera. But that jumped out at me as much as who was missing.
I think also I would include Noah Potter in there at that 3 tech spot. That I thought that was really
physically he looks different.
Smart move. Yeah. Maybe for him, maybe for Larry Johnson, for everybody. We talked about that with Tyler Friday dating back to the spring. Like, we liked him playing inside for Ohio State, could see what he'd bring. And Noah Potter's got some of that quickness that we've seen, whether that's Adolphus Washington or guys that kick inside the 3 technique. Draymond Jones comes to mind. I don't know if he's exactly like any of those guys. He hasn't played a lot, but he looks like he's about 275 pounds now, and he can handle himself in there. So we'll see how that plays out. But I don't think anybody really wanted to hear us come out of the first day of training camp talking about the defensive line.
No, but I mean, the defensive line is important, obviously, for Ohio State. When you have a brand new secondary and brand new linebackers, that defensive line it's sort of incumbent on them to really kind of force the issue so that the back half of the Buckeye defense steps up. And just to finish on Tim's point about JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer, I thought the most interesting thing is that they were just always together. And I think that those two are going to be just linked for their entire career. And we think about back in 2016, it was Nick Bosa, 2017, Chase Young. There was always that gap year, and these dudes, like, everything they do is going to be together, and I think it's going to be really fun to watch as they grow on the field, but also that relationship, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, when they're both in the top 3 picks of the NFL draft back-to-back. It's going to be fun to watch and think back to that first rep where they go right after one another here.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We don't need to keep talking about the defensive line.
No, I was
What do you
going to
wanna
jump.
talk
I was going to jump to a guy that impressed
All
me.
right,
I mean,
let's do it.
A guy that impressed me right off the hoof. A guy I didn't see in the spring, and you didn't either, was Donovan Jackson.
I think you probably took Spencer's guy here.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, go ahead, Spence. But I mean, these guys, man, it's like we were talking with Ryan Day after practice. These freshmen, they come in looking a whole lot different than they did even 5 years ago, much less 30 years ago. But these guys, go ahead, man. I don't want to steal your thunder.
The offensive line is the hardest position to play right away. I think it's even more difficult in quarterback to come in as a true freshman to play right away. Ohio State only uses it out of necessity, I think, once in the last 15 years with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Donovan Jackson is a different case. I think if Ohio State's looking to get the best 5 guys on the offensive line on the field, there's a case to be made after 3 weeks. I'm sure there's going to be. Donovan Jackson could be one of those best 5. I mean, he's the type of talent that you don't keep off the field. And whether that's in second string reps against Tulsa and Akron, when the time comes, he's going to flash, and he's going to show people why he was rated the way he was. And he's got a chance, I think, toward the middle of the season, by the end of the season, to really make a push on the offensive line.
That would require somebody else to drop the ball because
agree with that,
this is a very deep offensive line.
Yep.
It wouldn't just require one person.
Right, it would require multiple balls to be dropped. And I think
You talking about the fumble
boy,
rooski?
this
What are you talking
Bobby
about there?
Carpenter over
I just
here.
Talking about
feel-
running the fumble rooski?
I think that you look at it today and you can only take so much out of these first practices, but it's not a coincidence or surprise to anyone at this point that Josh Fryer was lined up with the first team offensive line. I know one
Left
person
guard.
on this staff here who's been a very big Josh Fryer fan for a couple
Oh,
of
it
years.
was you.
It was probably me. Thank you.
He's in the Friars Club.
And Ryan Day talked about him after practice and said it's about consistency, like it is for all these guys. All these guys that haven't played, it's about consistency.
Potential-wise, is anything more impressive looking, though, than Paris Johnson?
No.
And Nicholas Petit-Frere coming off the ball on the right side.
It's terrifying to
Dude, I'm telling you, I keep saying this. I've been covering this team for a long time. This is as impressive depth-wise an offensive line group as I've seen here. And that goes back. That's not saying anybody's better than Orlando Pace or any of that kind of baloney.
No, 1 to 13. It's by far the deepest they've had.
Very impressive. And Luke Whippler, working at center, and Harry Miller sitting there. I mean, a former 5-star. I mean,
Harry Miller's so important to this team
Yes.
with all these new quarterbacks. Like Harry Miller might be the most important player on the offense.
Yeah, doesn't have to just go in and play
second
center
most important.
after 12 hours notice. So, and I would throw in Jacob James in there as that backup as we're talking about the interior battles. I don't
Another guy
mean to
looks great.
overlook him, but the changes he's made physically, and then just right here when they started, they were going half line drills. I think I would have expected Luke Whippler to be with that second unit, but he wasn't. He was down there with special teams, and again, we see 6 periods to watch. We don't want to leap into too much, and we saw what Luke Whippler did in the spring, but you have to give Jacob James credit because he was out there next to Paris Johnson and Nicholas Petit-Frere as they were doing the right side of the line.
Yeah.
So clearly, he's somebody that they think could help if need be, but obviously this is Harry Miller's situation. And Josh Fryers, I think, is running with that left guard. We'll see how that plays out over the course of the month, and then as Spencer said, into the season. Also have to wait and see a little bit about the defensive transition for Steele Chambers. If he wants to stay there, I think that's the best fit for him at linebacker. That's where he practiced today. Also had the USC transfer, Paulier Neoteote. I got it. You got it. I've been working hard to get ready for the start of camp. The situation is the same for him. He is continuing to wait on that NCAA waiver for eligibility to be able to play for the Buckeyes this year, but he's got a uniform on. He's able to practice. Sort of the tough part for Ryan Day and Al Washington these first 10 days or so as they wait for that is how many reps do you give him? Where do you put him?
Yeah.
As Ryan Day said, you don't want to waste quote-unquote first and second team reps on somebody that you may not have this season.
Right, you have to count him as a walk-on. That's what he is. Right now, Paulier Neoteote is a walk-on linebacker at Ohio State. Therefore, meaning he's not going to get the reps ahead of Dallas Gant or Taraji Mitchell or Kayvon Pope or Tommy Eichenberg or Cody Simon or any of these guys until they figure out what's going to happen. And I don't think that, we live in a world of college football now where anytime that we're like, okay, we're waiting on a waiver, you just assume it's going to go through and be cleared. I don't think that's necessarily a surefire thing here. So the Buckeyes have to move very tentatively when it comes to how much time they put into Neoteote right now.
Here's a question for you. Coming out of just watching 6 periods of practice today, what is their starting defensive backfield? Who is in it?
Well, what's the formation?
No, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you give me the formation, you tell me how they're starting. I mean, I'm still sitting here just like when they left spring. I'm still wondering.
I saw about 5 different formations in 6 periods.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Spencer.
I think it ties into the linebacker situation, though, because if you're going to have 2 or 3 linebackers that you can really rely on, I think you're going to probably put a bullet on the field and play either Ronnie Hickman or Craig Young. I think both of those guys have a lot of potential that can really make an impact and a difference in the defense. And then I think the safety spot, Josh Proctor feels like has one wrapped up. Other than that, it could be a revolving door of talent. I mean, when you look at Corey Williams, when you look at Lathan Ransom, Cameron Martinez in the slot.
I looked at both of those guys, Spencer, because at one point there was an early rep where those 3 safeties, if you want to consider that, how you want to categorize Corey Williams maybe as a bullet, Lathan Ransom maybe in the slot, but all 3 of those guys in my mind are safeties. They were on the field together. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then you look at corner, and you've got 3 guys who are probably as ready as anybody to take a leap and be a star cornerback. Cameron Brown was on his way to that before he tore his Achilles last year. Sevin Banks has already solidified himself as one of the top returning quarterbacks in the Big Ten. And then Ryan Watts has all the potential in the world, a guy who's super long, like an ideal Kerry Combs corner. And so you look at this secondary, I don't really think it matters who the starting secondary is right now, because those guys are going to be rotating and finding new spots and really making an impact wherever they line up.
But it's a little bit troubling. I mean, not troubling, that may be overselling it, but that Cam Brown isn't what I would call 100% full go. He's out there working, he's doing some reps and things like that. And I'm just wondering how they're thinking, and I'm talking about the coaches, how they're thinking, how they're going to make this all matter. Because like I said, you couldn't take a photo of the starting defensive secondary coming out of the spring, and you couldn't take one, I don't think, today. I mean, you could throw one out there, but the one they're going to play is still way up for grabs.
Yeah, I mean, and not to go too far into the recruiting weeds here, but when you're talking about that 3 safety look, that's why they're recruiting 3 safeties in the class of 2022. They have Kai Stokes committed. They want Xavier Wampa and Zion Branch because they think that all 3 of those positions can be on the field at the same time. And so I guess from a recruiting standpoint, it's kind of good for them to have the proof in the pudding out here, but you have a couple guys back there. Court Williams is going to be a difference maker as long as he's healthy. Sevin Banks, Cam Brown, none of these guys were playing in the spring, so it's a lot of wait and see type of situation, and I think that's actually really good news for the young guys, the Jordan Hancocks, the Ja'Kalen Johnsons, those players that are probably ceiling-wise the best on this roster at cornerback right now. And then you have a lot of guys like Legend Cavazos. He's got to step up. So you have players out there all over the place. But when you're talking about Ohio State in the changes that we're expecting, and the guys that you think are going to step up, and we talked about it in Lettermen Live. Mayan Williams looks different. He just looks like a different guy.
Yeah, I was going to check those boxes there in the backfield. CJ Stroud still was the first guy through the line, still the first one taking reps today for the Ohio State offense. That's not a surprise.
Who was second?
Well, Jack Miller was in line second.
That's what you said, but yesterday
that's what I said was going to happen, and it did happen. And I'm going to be honest with you, he did not throw the football well today from what I saw. Now, it was just 6 periods. We're not going to do this again. That's just a fact that CJ Stroud, I think, and Kyle McCord are the top 2 quarterbacks on the depth chart. The surprise for me was Mayan Williams being first in line and not going with the seniority and incumbent, to use Ryan words for that, with Master Teague. I think that this has been heading in this direction for a little while.
It's been percolating.
Not specifically with Mayan Williams, but that Ohio State had seen sort of the ceiling with Master Teague, and a youth movement may have been underway, and that's Mayan Williams getting a chance to go out there first and set the pace. That's Marcus Crowley being healthy, getting those reps. Now, he was behind Master Teague. That was third out of that list. Mm-hmm. And then Travion Henderson, who just moves differently. Yep. But the fact that Mayan Williams, coaches know how this works. They know that we're watching. They know that the players are keeping tabs on where they are. So, Spencer, that Mayan Williams goes first, I think, is significant.
But I think one thing to make clear is that's not to say Master Teague can't have an impact on the season. He's going to play. He's going to have an impact. But when you look at, I like to talk about floor and ceiling. When you look at floor and ceiling, Master Teague probably has the highest floor. But that being said, these other guys have a much higher ceiling. And I think when you talk about Mayan Williams, he flashed at points, obviously small sample size. There are just a couple guys on this roster who move differently. Travion Henderson, Mayan Williams seems to be becoming more of a better at cutting back. Marcus Crowley cuts really well right now for where he is in his progression. A long journey back from that injury. Those guys all can move really quickly, and they add an element to this offense that, simply put, Master Teague just doesn't quite have in his arsenal. I think he can be really useful in the offense. I just don't think he is going to be an every down back, and it was apparent today. That is almost like a statement without making a statement. Mayan Williams was first.
What stands out about Mayan Williams is, even the little bit we got to see him play last year, he's always falling forward when he's tackled.
He's a mover.
He's a mover. And Travion Henderson, as my friend here, Austin Ward, pointed out, has moves. I mean, it's the wiggle he's got is crazy. And I'm really interested to see how Tony Alford settles the deck, because those 4 guys are all different.
Master Teague's floor might not be higher than anyone else's, but it's just been the most walked on. And so you trust the footing. You know
where it is.
You know what you're going to get. If it's 4th and 1 and the Buckeyes are at the 1 yard line, give me Master Teague all day. But at this point, you're talking about how do we put the most explosive offense on the field, and Master Teague is not that. So you have to find new ways to move these guys around. And the point is, you have 5 really talented running backs on this roster. They're going to all need the football at some point this season. So you just run them out.
Run them out. All right.
Run the wishbone.
Zach's back there running it for
What about
us.
all the receivers, though?
Hey, that's another day. This is one practice.
Oh, man.
That's in the books.
So much to talk about.
A long way to go before Ohio State opens the season at Minnesota on September 2nd. But the first one, got to come out here and hang out with these guys and watch some football. Always feels good. Put the ball in Berm's hand. This has been a practice report. It's brought to you by Byers Auto. That's Spencer, Tim, Berm. I'm Austin. We will see you all day, every day, all month, all year for Ohio State coverage as the Buckeyes get this 2021 season underway. See you next time.